When I first started banding birds, I had just turned 18. In fact, I just found a sheet of paper that was mailed from the bird banding lab to me 3 days after my 18th birthday. It says, enclosed is your application for bird banding. And you have to be 18 to, and I got it exactly 1 month and 1 day after my 18th birthday, my banding permit.
Each spring and fall at Lincoln Land Community College in Springfield, Illinois, a small group of men and women arrive in the mornings to capture, band, and release birds. The effort is among thousands taking place across the country and the world in a drive to gather as much information as possible, to collect small details about individual birds, which can then be fed into a massive database and collectively help researchers study not just birds, but the environment in which we all live.
That's the way it's supposed to be. This is one of our smallest birds right here.
Really doesn't. It's the ones that are short and stout like cardinals that you try not to get bit by. Ooh. So they pack a little bit of a punch behind them.
One of the things about bird banding, if you have a station like I do here at the Lincoln Land Community College, if you can have it a long-term situation, it can tell you about the change in bird populations. First of all, it also can tell you if a species or a group of birds had a good productive season here or somewhere else in the fall, how many young birds are produced. You can determine if birds stay in the same territory year after year after year, how long they live and stay in that territory, how long they are paired together. If they return every year both from the winter from the north or from the south, coming in back in the spring. So there's a variety of things that we can learn from these banding of birds. 92.
92? Okay. Banders collect data on each individual bird, taking wing measurements, sexing, and aging the birds when possible. One task requires that they blow gently on the bird's belly to clear away the feathers so that they can estimate fat reserves for the birds that are migrating through the site.
What is FOSP?
SOSP?
Yeah.
Songs.
It's not just about the birds. This banding data can be used as ecosystem-wide.
The information gathered each day will feed into a centralized database overseen by the U.S. Geological Survey, making it available to researchers everywhere.
Yeah, what do you think? Anna?
In reality, this data, it's only limited to an individual's own creativity. It can tell you anything from obvious information, such as migration patterns of birds, when they migrate, where they pass through, the timing of it, how does that change from one year to the next. What about long-term change, like climate change? It can tell us about the success rates of breeding seasons, particularly in the fall. It's even far-reaching because birds are often referred to as indicator species. So the way that they roll, in a sense, how they're affected could also be an indication of how other creatures in that environment can be affected as well. Especially, that's really important in relation to climate change and long-term human effects.
I'm just going to let him go.
The day begins at dawn with the unfurling of special mist nets, which will be used to catch birds throughout the morning. They resemble a volleyball net, but are specially designed with shelves that create loose, baggy pockets designed to entrap the birds and hold them while keeping the risk of harm low. They must be set at the start of the day and then closed when the banders finish, so that no birds are caught when the banders are not present. During the day, the banders will make frequent rounds to each of the nets to check for birds.
On a daily basis, we have the banding station running from about a half an hour before sunrise in the morning until around 11 o'clock, depends on when we get the last birds are out of the nets and the nets are up and the birds processed. So I would say an average day of somewhere between 4.5 and 5 hours. That would be 6 days a week if it's not raining. If it's raining, then I cut it short.
Once the birds are caught, the banders must work quickly but carefully to retrieve and collect the birds.
Know how to do it efficiently and proficiently. It does take time on some birds. It looks like I'm really messing around with the head sometimes, but if you know what you're doing, it comes off quickly.
The schedule is set by the birds. The banding team must allow enough time between each net check so that the birds will return to the areas where the nets are located. But they must also check the nets frequently so that no bird remains in the net longer than 1 hour.
Okay, let's try this. See if we can get that off that wing. Yeah, it's being a real good trooper here.
Mist nets have been used for decades, but it wasn't until 2011 that a large-scale study was conducted on the safety of the bird capture method. A review of over 345,000 records by researchers from the University of California at Berkeley revealed that the birds are rarely injured or killed by mist nets.
Good bird.
Tony has found an unusual bird and a complex challenge in the woods.
Okay, one leg's free.
The tiny bird has become completely entangled in the net.
All this work, don't want to let him slip away.
Its small size not only requires skilled hands, but there is the very real possibility that once free, it will slip from his grasp. Once the bird has been successfully removed, Tony's pleasure is clearly evident.
All right. Yes, bird. Winter wren. Okay.
Now it's back to share the good news. The banding station draws a mix of students meeting class requirements and volunteers who simply enjoy working with the birds.
I usually try to volunteer at least twice a week. Kind of depends on my work schedule. A lot of the things that I do are help with recording of data, measurements of the wing chord, sex of the bird, for the record keeping that Vern has to turn in. Other things I've been trained to do are extract birds from the nets. Sometimes it can be very difficult, and you may have a video of me trying to get a tufted titmouse out of the net. So sometimes I do that, and just this year I've started helping to band some birds. So eventually I'd like to get a supplemental banding permit and maybe do some banding on my own.
Stevie Emmons is one of Tony's former Lincoln Land students. She has gone on to study biology at Illinois State University.
I think that birds, they're available to everyone. Like, you can walk outside, you can set up a bird feeder and just see bunches of birds, whereas, you know, with other organisms, like, sometimes you have to go specific places to see them, and, you know, birds just kind of operate in the same areas and everywhere, you know, that humans are. So
He's like,
he's gonna get me.
Yeah, he is too. He's like, they will.
Stevie returns regularly to help with the banding project. Bird banding is not without critics. Catching, bagging, measuring, and banding all put stress on the birds. Some believe the benefits do not justify the risk. But the banders are confident that their work is ultimately beneficial to birds, necessary, and humane.
There's a variety of reasons why we do band birds for the scientific value, and it's going to be an ongoing thing. Some people just say we should be handling any wild animals in any sort of way. And so yes, there are people that probably would be opposed to bird banding, but as far as the hurting the birds and so forth, we wouldn't be doing this if we were hurting the birds in any way.
Decades of experience allows Vern to quickly attach a leg band. Specially designed pliers are used to place the band in the bird's leg with no risk of squeezing too tightly or leaving any gap in the band. Once the band is attached and measurements are taken, the birds are quickly released.
He's waiting just for an opportunity to escape. We should be processing birds and getting them released as quickly as possible. We don't want to hold birds very long.
Question is, as far as concerns over bird banding and potential harm that can be done to the birds. There is, just like with everything, I think there's always going to be a group who do express concern, and we don't want to make light of it. That is why we follow standard protocols that are set up by bird banding organizations throughout the country, throughout the world, and realizing that everything that we do is always in the best interest of the birds. And even if we're doing public events, we always have to be most mindful of the birds. There is some occasional mortality that does take place, but that's very rare, and we've been very fortunate.
Last fall, I had a grand total out of, 24 or 500 birds banded. 6 die. 4 of them died in one day, all because of deer. We're eating them. Otherwise, so we only really lost 2 if it wasn't for that deer problem. And 2 out of 2,400 is like about 1 out of 1,000. So it can happen occasionally. We have a hawk kill a bird in the net once in a while too. And it would be catching birds anyway because that's its food. It just was a little on the opportunistic side, so I feel bad about that. But really, we check the nest like we're supposed to, and we know how to extract the birds like we're supposed to. We have very few casualties.
With its location on the Lincoln Land campus, teaching is an integral part of the bird banding station. Biology students are given assignments related to the station and have an opportunity to see and participate in the research that goes on.
Well, I hope my students walk away with a few things. Number one, an appreciation for birds that they may not had before, even to the point they may be able to recognize the backyard birds.
You don't have them too down.
Yep. Well, these ones are pretty much saying like what kind of birds.
It's clear that Vern enjoys working with the students, helping them complete their assignments and offering added insights and information to reinforce their classroom experience.
What other methods can you think of where you could catch birds or anything?
It allows them to see the importance of the scientific process. And that's also the other key aspect of bird banding.
They go through a process of ossification. They have little tiny vertical bones grows between these two, so solidifies the head. Okay, and we can look through the skin just like we did on that fat and see those little tiny dots, those columns. So when it gets to be that like this,
more adult.
It's all adult plumage.
Okay.
That could happen by November or December.
Okay.
I feel like I'm mentoring perhaps a variety of people. I do. It's kind of neat because I had a mentor and I learned a lot of things from him, and so when these students come out here, it kind of thrills me to see that people are actually interested. And if you have just a few people go on and become naturalists because of something, it makes it all worthwhile. See how white those bars are in the wings? Very white. They have a lot of buffy in them. That means they were hatched last year, so that'd be 2014. It's after hatching year, so it means they were hatched 2014 or earlier. Now you got all that? Now when you come back, I'm going to be the one that quizzes you on that. Money doesn't.
Fair enough.
The hole so it doesn't damage anybody. What I could have done.
Near the banding station, new bluebird boxes are installed in a section of prairie grass. Nearby, an observation blind with feeders allows students and visitors to observe birds throughout the year. Within days of the boxes going up, a bluebird is spotted. Later, a pair of birds, male and female, are captured in the nets. The bluebirds are the first ever banded at this station. Research and discoveries of the past decades have altered how we think of birds. The idea that birds descended from dinosaurs was first proposed in the 19th century. Initially dismissed by many, it is generally accepted by today's biologists. As surprising as it may be to some, studies of fossilized tissues from the Tyrannosaurus rex show that the king of the dinosaurs is more closely related to the sparrow than the alligator.
The feathers did not evolve for flight. The feathers evolved initially for, well, we don't know for sure, but speculating probably for insulation and to keep them warm, and that's what they were, just scales that got a little bit more elaborate to insulate them to some degree. And the reptiles, the traditional reptiles, what we think of as the snakes and the lizards and the crocodilians and turtles and tortoises, that term doesn't even really exist scientifically because now birds are in that group and they are all under the same umbrella. Without a doubt, they are just dinosaurs with feathers.
In addition to educating students at the community college, the bird banding station draws members of the public of all ages and seeks to promote an appreciation of birds and the natural world.
It's never too late to take up a new hobby, and definitely birding is a great one to do.
On Saturday mornings, birders often visit, hoping to find and possibly photograph birds that they might not otherwise get a chance to see up close.
Right there, police car. Busy all over, see?
Yeah.
So we finally start catching some more birds. Yeah, another sparrow. Any clue? No. He's molting those tail feathers. See that?
As a master bander, Vern Clean has sponsored and helped more than a dozen other banders learn the craft, including Tom May, a retired teacher from New Athens, Illinois, who specializes in banding kestrels, and has come to Springfield to help for a morning at the station.
A couple years closer to 80 than I am, though.
I turned 80.
It's on 80?
Yeah.
Okay. I still got 7 years to go. Okay, we should be on band number 42.
Got it.
Well, congratulations on 80. That's means you're starting your 9th decade.
Golly, you sure know how to make a guy feel good, don't you?
There are birds that almost everyone knows and loves. The goldfinch is one of these. Each fall, the little finch cloaks itself in the drab colors of a winter evening, waiting until spring arrives, when it bursts forth in a brilliant golden cloak that not even the sun can match. But after spending time at the banding station, it's almost impossible not to begin to appreciate the subtle beauty of the finch's less flashy cousins.
And sometimes even the common birds, like blackbirds, the iridescent sheen of a grackle.
Hi.
Got a nice
Are
color
you?
on your head.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that a grackle existed. I thought there was one thing and it was a blackbird. So once you get them, it's just this iridescent sheen of greens and purples, and it's beautiful, you know.
There is something special about birds. Perhaps they trigger in us some universal desire to escape the confines of our earthbound existence. For many, the fascination begins in youth, but lasts a lifetime.
My dad was in charge of a 4-H club in south central Nebraska back in the late 40s, and they took up birding, or bird observing back at that time, and I just continued because it was fun.
My grandfather had a little Peterson's field guide to North American birds in his garage, and we would always look at birds in the yard. I remember doing that as a very small kid, 6, 7.
For me, it was in 5th and 6th grade when I first became interested in birds. There is definitely something magical about having that bird in your hand, and feeling its heart race, feeling it beat, and feeling the warmth that it produces, and I think that's what keeps people coming back, and then seeing it fly away as well.
Okay, so this is the way you do it. Hold your hand out like this. And then in between these two fingers, I'm going to stick its head right above your fingers, and you're just going to curl your fingers gently right around its body. Perfect. And then you just turn around.
He's like,
Okay, just open your hand or pull it up, and it'll go up. And it has some already.
You know, the first time I just got to release the bird, You feel the feathers and the heat from the bird and its heartbeat.
To hold the birds in hand and to set them free again, free to explore the sky. While we watch, bound to the earth, we know that releasing these tiny souls is the closest that we will ever come to soaring among the treetops.
Bye-bye. All right.
See them flying through the trees and everything, but you don't ever really get to touch them or hold them. So it's, I don't know, it's just a great experience to actually have one in your hands.
I think it's a very natural part of human curiosity, just to be able to be close to nature and hold the birds and see animals in their natural habitat. So for me, I'm not going to say it's a spiritual, but it's something I love to do.
To break free from the gravity that binds us to this land. To leave our mundane experiences behind us and escape to the clouds. Hope is a thing with feathers, perching in our souls.